Good morning. I sat down at the typewriter this morning to do a little formal eulogy to W.A.C. Bennett. Then I changed my mind, because one phrase kept running through my head. I interviewed W.A.C. between 1952 and 1976, 1977, at least 100 times. And most of these times I was on the prod. And when I was on the prod, or when anybody else was on the prod, he had one standard classic phrase. And I can see him in his Homburg and his coat with a little velvet collar, looking me straight in the eye and saying, "The answer is no, my friend," putting his hat on his head, turning, giving you an evil little snicker, and walking away. The answer is no, my friend. A little bit about W.A.C. Bennett, BC's man of the century, after this break. W.A.C. Bennett died in hospital in Kelowna late on Friday night. And to say it was the end of an era is banal at the very least, because in our time, in the 20 years that he was the Premier of British Columbia, not counting his stormy crossing of the floor just before that, he innovated the drive forward of British Columbia. Let's not kid ourselves. There were times when he trampled on the opposition. There were times when he lacked a great deal of patience. But boy, he was the man with the ideas. And one thing we should make quite clear, I'd like to anyway, is that W.A.C. Bennett masterminded that 20 years like nobody else could. He was a man who did things his way himself, with great success and with considerable elan. Troubles he would ignore. Good times were always ahead. Here is the Bennett home in Kelowna, where Mr. Bennett spent much of his precious private time. And as you have been told, of course, W.A.C. is to be cremated, and there will be a funeral service in Kelowna First United Church, at which he attended services regularly when he was in town. He spent a lot of time in Kelowna altogether. There will, of course, be other memorial services throughout the province. There'll be one in Vancouver at the Christchurch Cathedral at 3 p.m. tomorrow. And in Victoria, the Governor-General, Ed Schreier, will attend a service at Metropolitan United Church, and cremation will follow the services in Kelowna. You know, my reporter, Brian Coxford, took a can present to us a most unusual look. At this particular time, it seems particularly appropriate, of the Bennett home in Kelowna. And it was yesterday, I think, that Brian took his camera crew, with the approval of the family, to look at 31 years of political memorabilia in the basement of the Kelowna home. With him on this little tour is Anita Tozer, his daughter, and R.J. Bennett, his other son.
In the basement of the Bennett family home, daughter Anita and son R.J. were looking over the W.A.C. Bennett souvenirs, a collection of over 31 years of public life, 20 as Premier. Some are priceless items, some caricatures, all of them museum pieces. No amount of money can buy them.
There's this inkwell, which was in the original Bank of British Columbia back in the 1800s, and found its way to England and back again to be presented to him when the new Bank of British Columbia was established. And then this is the bank book that he had, which was the first bank deposit made in the new Bank of British Columbia. And
was there a deposit in it?
Oh, yes, there was. Done in the old-fashioned way where you have a credit instead of a debit. And
it was July 18th, 68.
Yeah. And the case is gold-filled kid. Lovely piece of material.
And the telephone?
The telephone is from the Premier's office, too. It's the original one that was in there, and when they rewired and modernized, this was presented to him. It's mahogany and gold, and it has the seal of the province on the dial. Then the baseball looks a little strange in this collection, but he was an avid baseball fan, which all of his friends will remember. And he used to follow the fortunes of the Milwaukee Braves when his friend Lou Perini was the owner of the Braves. And this baseball was presented to him the year that Milwaukee won the pennant. and the stand so that he would have it, and it's signed by all the team members.
This is a picture presented to Father at the time of the signing of the Columbia Treaty, and of course you can see the Prime Minister of Canada, Lester Pearson, there, and President Johnson of the United States and Father walking away from the plane.
And this is one of the things that resulted from that historic
Yes,
meeting.
this is the copy of the check which they received at that particular time.
Rather large one. I'm sure that's one of the larger ones you'll ever see.
Yes, I would think so, unless inflation keeps on.
Yeah.
So this movie goes back to the just prior to 1952, and Father had it's a cartoon depicting Father and Tilly Rolston on a small lifeboat and the large ship with Social Credit, or I should say the Coalition, written on it, and Social Credit hadn't come into being as yet. And the caption underneath says, "You know, maybe it isn't going to sink after all," and this is supposed to be Tilly speaking to Father.
And of course, history tells the truth, doesn't it?
Yes, that's what happened. Now, this one, I think, had Norris at his best, and it was one that, at the time, thinking back on it, my father had a great sense of humor, and he enjoyed all of these cartoons. And this one shows the famous Flying Phil driving the car, and at what looks like breakneck speed, looking at the police escort and the motorcycle going alongside, and you have in the back seat the President Johnson and Lester Pearson, and then Father sitting in the middle with this, as Norris used to use, this Puritan-type hat on their head, and Father is sounding forth to the two of them. Now, here's the deal. Phil blacktops the road from California to the Elations. Mike gives up the Yukon, and Lyndon gives us Washington and Oregon. So that one at the time caused many a laugh, I think.
There's perhaps one thing about W.A.C. Bennett's life that not too many people knew about, at least outside the family. And that involved a poem that he would read to himself every morning to psych himself up for the day. It perhaps characterized what he was all about. A poem written by Edgar A. Guest entitled, "It Couldn't Be Done." Here's how the first verse went. Somebody said that it couldn't be done, but he with a chuckle replied that maybe it couldn't, but he'd be the one who wouldn't say so until he tried. So he buckled right in with a trace of a grin on his face. If he worried, he hid it. He started to sing as he tackled the thing that couldn't be done, and he did it.
Well, my reporter Brian Coxford is, as you know, in Kelowna, and I think Brian's live in the studio in Kelowna right now, and I've got to give you a little kind of journalistic pat in the back, Brian. That's the first time in 31 years that I interviewed and was around Premier Bennett, former Premier Bennett, that I realized that he was a poetry lover. Did you say he read that every day?
Yeah, apparently what happened, Jack, and this is a little-known fact outside of the family, that he used to recite the poem to himself, perhaps in front of the mirror when he was shaving in the morning. He used it as sort of a psychological thing to psych him up. If there was a task that he figured was perhaps too tough to handle, he'd get some inspiration from this particular poem, and that's more or less what he patterned his life around. That's what we've been told.
Well, matter of fact, I don't think I ever interviewed him when he was down, you know, because he'd come in there full of, what's the word, pizzazz. As soon as the microphones were on, he was away. Brian, what's been happening in Kelowna since you did the little piece in the basement of the Bennett home?
Well, if you can appreciate, Jack, the death happened at 10:30 on Friday night, and as a result of the weekend's activities, etc., it took perhaps a little longer to get funeral arrangements set up and to find out who was going to be coming here to the funeral, what dignitaries, what government heads. And those wheels will more or less be turning very fast this morning as the lines are open. People are back at the office in Victoria, and we'll be able to determine exactly which government heads will be here. We do know that the Governor General will be in Victoria along with the Lieutenant Governor at one of the services. And at the service here in Kelowna, the eulogy to be delivered by Grace McCarthy, who was a cabinet minister under W.A.C. Bennett, and of course we know as a cabinet minister now. All of the old W.A.C. Bennett cabinet ministers will be here. with one exception. Ray Williston will be in Victoria to deliver the eulogy there. And we should say two exceptions, because Robert Bonner will deliver the eulogy at a special Vancouver service, which will take place an hour after the Victoria and Kelowna ones.
Messages of condolences coming in from all over the country?
They are. Prime Minister sent a telegram, various other dignitaries, all the social credit constituencies in the province sent telegrams, former cabinet ministers, flowers from very close friends here in Kelowna. Because the florist shops were closed over the weekend and delivery stopped at 2 o'clock on Saturday afternoon, not all the flowers have arrived, and I'm sure it's going to be quite a busy scene at the Bennett home today.
Are you going to stay up for the memorial service in Kelowna tomorrow?
Yes, that'll be at 2 o'clock at First Church United Church here in Kelowna, and that was the church that W.A.C. Bennett used to attend. That was his family church here in Kelowna.
Well, thank you very much indeed, Brian. Much obliged. I'm going to leave the analysis and the inquest on the political career of W.A.C. Bennett to the political scientists. But once a number of years ago, he said to me, Webster. In fact, once he phoned me up when I was doing a piece on there and said, Webster, you're a liar, hung up in my ear, and I never was able to get him back on that issue. I can't even remember what the issue was at the time. Something to do with the interest on parity bonds or some bank transaction, because, as you know, he was his own finance minister in spades. We'll leave all that to the political scientists, but for 31 years association as a reporter with Mr. Bennett, a man who has drunk interminable cups of tea when he held his little Christmas bash in the Hotel Vancouver, you always had to be on your toes. He never failed to fly a kite, and a couple of times I missed the kites. I remember once, before the Bank of BC caper, comes in from California, and he says, we're all sitting around, and he says, wonderful banks they have in California, magnificent banks, owned and controlled on the West Coast. We should have such a bank in British Columbia. Is that on the record or off the record, Mr. Bennett? Oh, no, that's just background. It's not really, it's just that I'm very impressed with the bank. So, of course, we all went dutifully out and wrote non-attributable stories on the possibility of banks. He just used us, in a very clever political manner. And a couple of months later up, of course, came his first big battle for a bank charter in Ottawa on the Bank of British Columbia. That was a battle he didn't quite win, but most of the battles he won. But I suppose if you go over his inventive mind, boy, was he inventive. Net debt, remember? Wiped it out, $191 million by a stroke of a pen, and called it contingent liability. And in no time flat, he had most of us believing it. And then his homeowner grant. That was another stroke of political genius, because the homeowner grant could variously be described in budget speeches as various things, but the man in the street, the man paying his taxes, knew that at the bottom of his tax form, it said, provincial grant, taken off your school purposes grant. And he knew that that was a gift direct from W.A.C. Bennett's government in Victoria. And of course, the successive politicians. Once W.A.C. had put these kind of things into operation, nobody could touch them. They were then carved in stone, and still are carved in stone. He has never been given quite enough credit, though, for his overall masterminding of the plan. When he took over in 1952, remember that one-seat caper when Harold Winch and when he called the election, Harold Winch asked the Lieutenant Governor to give the reins of power to the old CCF. Didn't do it, as a matter of fact. But from then on, he was coming in on the rising tide of the post-war era. But he was the one who masterminded, without doubt, on his personal plan for British Columbia to open up the entire province. And he did it first with roads. And he did it in spades, as we well know. It was the blacktop government, and a most effective blacktop government, because Pacey's got roads that never had roads before in British Columbia. Same with the railway. The railway financing is under criticism now, but it was Bennett who pushed the prosperity north to Prince George, and beyond that, Summit Lake and Fort Nelson, etc., etc., etc. People may now quibble about the drive to Dease Lake. People may well say that he didn't recognize that the day of the Pioneer Railroad was over. But the money and the improvement in the economy that was poured into those parts of BC was truly phenomenal. Same with the, leave power for a moment. Let's talk about ferries. Boy, what he did to the CPR was a thing to remember. When he had trouble on the ferries, when he had trouble with the employees, he brought in the Civil Defence Act, took over, and despite our quibble about the ferries today, he set up the second largest ferry fleet in the entire world, which operates with remarkable efficiency. The last time I interviewed him, I saw him in his house in Kelowna, and he came, and he was so anxious to do something on the air that when he came to town the next time we met and we did a radio broadcast, and he said to me, and I remember with great accuracy what he said. He said, "Jack," he said, he didn't use Mr. Webster on this occasion. Normally it was Mr. Webster, or just a glinty look at you as you asked some potentially embarrassing question. He said, "Jack, if there's one thing I want to be remembered for," he said, "it's the Columbia River Treaty." And of course he meant also his two-river power policy, because he was the sole architect of that. He overcame all the complaints about the potential giveaway to Axel Wenner-Gren and the boys, and when the time came, he just took back the Wenner-Gren franchise and went boring ahead with Peace River and the Columbia River Treaty. One of his biggest coups, I suppose, was that when he negotiated with the international unions the no-strike clauses on the construction of the dams. And as he said to me that particular day, he said, "When I'm gone," he said, "one thing," he said, "I hope to be remembered for is the fact that we're going to have the most fantastic resources of power. We're going to have the renegotiation of the Columbia River Treaty, which will bring hundreds and hundreds of millions in boon and benefit to the people of British Columbia." He was a tough guy, no doubt about it. And he had one, I suppose there was one easily identifiable fault, identifiable in any non-political manner. Once he had picked you as a member of his team, that was it. He applied to you, without question, his standards of political conduct. And it was therefore difficult for him to recognize on occasion that now and again somebody would let him down. And he would defend that person beyond all reason to the very end, and then he would make the quick move, chop off the head, and start all over again. W.A.C. Bennett, British Columbia's man of the century. The like will not be seen in this province for a long, long time, if ever. On any other morning, Judy LaMarsh and I would have started this program with a couple of giggles. The Honourable Judy LaMarsh, erstwhile cabinet minister in the Liberal government, erstwhile Stormy Petrel of the Liberal government, erstwhile leader of that never-to-be-forgotten Truth Squad, erstwhile broadcaster and hotline radio broadcaster par extraordinaire in the city of Vancouver, educational television broadcaster in Ontario, chairman of a very expensive Royal Commission, and now she's the author of a book. Judy.
And just a sweet, sweet old friend of yours anyway, Jack.
A sweet...
All those terrible things.
A sweet, sweet, slim friend of mine.
Yeah, how do you like that, eh?
You'll forgive if I draw personal attention to that.
That's what comes from starving in the East, you know.
It's sheer
when they turn off
jealousy
the
on my
lights and the
part.
energy.
Yeah. Tell me, what did you met W.A.C. a number of times.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about him from your point of view.
Well, I met him at a lot of Dominion provincial conferences, and he was always smiling, always courteous, and gave away nothing. You never really know what he's going to do. He didn't say much there. He'd come back here and say it. And I interviewed him once just after Dave Barrett defeated him. He'd been away for a while, remember, till he sort of got his Amour Propre back. And I was sad about that, because all of a sudden, it wasn't quite 20 years and it was gone. And it took him a little while to get back at his feet, I think.
Well, of course, even myself, and I was pretty rabid against him in certain phases of his government, we used to get so annoyed at the way you people in the East treated him. You people, generically speaking, you know. And
well, it was partly because of his initials, you know, because you people started to call him Wacky, and we called him Wacky. And if you call a premier Wacky, you begin to think that, you know, you start from a base where he's none too bright. But he was sure bright.
Oh, and very aggressive indeed. And a number of the things he advocated, of course, are finally coming true right now. For instance, he always subscribed to equalization grants, but he didn't like them. And I think it's right to say that he, as a former New Brunswicker, he knew what the need was in the Maritimes. But he always felt that other governments wasted money and that the wrong people got it. And it was full of fiddling and a little bit of this and a little bit of that. I remember when he first campaigned on a negative income tax. Must be 10 years ago.
That's a long time ago.
Yeah, here we are
More
now.
than that.
Here we are now with the child care applications under family allowance in the Liberal budget, which is in effect a negative income tax.
Well, he was obviously he was British Columbia, and coming out of the post-war era, really the big boom era. And because of his son, his name will keep going a lot longer, I suppose. But I don't know what history will say of him. A lot of people said, you know, he gave away the resources of the province. A lot of people said that actually the thing he thought was greatest, the two-river policy, is a damaging one. We'll have to wait and see. At least it got BC up off the ground and moving.
Certainly did, and of course, I suppose his greatest strength was his ability to change his mind at any given time. I remember once putting it to him that he was a socialist when necessary, but not necessarily a socialist, and he regarded this with some considerable humour. That was just at the time when he turned on the BC Electric, because they wouldn't buy power from the peace. There was some complication about the federally chartered BC Electric. So he just stepped in, nationalized it.
Well,
but
he's
in
a
fact,
pragmatic politician and damn successful.
In fact, though, when you talk to him about that in later years, he would draw the attention to nitty-gritty that, in fact, there was no confiscation of the BC Electric. That had finally come after all the incredible court actions that he took them over by negotiation, which is clinically correct. You know.
Took him over by negotiation.
Well, he obtained possession of the BC Electric in effect by negotiations, and he could always say to you, if he was in a blunt mood, I did not confiscate the BC Electric. We did not. The people of British Columbia bought the BC Electric.
BC Electric just gave up the ghost.
Yeah, that was the day that Grauer died, that the bill was introduced in the House, August, whatever year that was. Let's take a little break, Judy, and then we can come back in a better, in a different climate to talk about you, the very political lady. Judy LaMarsh. I'll see if I can provoke Judy LaMarsh now. It's not difficult, is it, Judy?
No, I'll just bash that right back at you.
I have in my hands a pot boiler, a very readable pot boiler, called A Very Political Lady by Judy LaMarsh, which is the expression of her subconscious or near conscious on the political future of this country, and which is used really as a bit of a scalpel on her political enemies. How do you plead, Judy LaMarsh?
I plead not guilty. Don't have political enemies.
Have you made up with Pierre?
Didn't use a scalpel, and
You use a hatchet?
no, it's an interesting read, but it doesn't sort of hammer anybody in the ground.
It tells about this magnificent woman who gets forced out of the cabinet on the abortion issue. That's you.
No, I wasn't forced out of the cabinet at any time, and an abortion issue wasn't there when I was there.
It's obviously you.
Well, she's like me, and LaMarsh is my name reversed, and she's a lawyer, and she comes from Niagara Falls. But they say, Jack, when you write a first novel, you're supposed to write about what you know. And she does reflect a lot of my views, but she is not Judy LaMarsh.
I didn't get that. The heroine of the book. I'm sorry I missed that. Even Fotheringham didn't point it out to me.
We didn't get it either.
Kathleen Marshall
With one
is
L.
Kathleen LaMarsh.
Yeah, that's
So
right.
it is you.
No, it's not me.
And I recognized a mutual friend of ours in an early hysterical speech in the book called Sima Holt.
Yes, there's someone who's very like Sima there.
Is Sima going to sue you?
I don't even know if she knows whether she's had a chance to read
Is
it.
anyone going to sue you?
No, I don't think so. Why would they?
Some of this stuff is
Well, I ought to sue Fotheringham. He says that I own a Campanolo's in there, and I'm mystified. I don't know where.
But some of the stuff is so potentially libelous as people are identified that I'm not even going to try and identify the people who are in the book with very little disguise.
Oh. Well,
Dreadful.
but that's one of the levels, Jack. That it is not only just a novel, it's a romantic play. And part of the fun of it is playing the game of guessing who it is.
That's right. A sex scandal shocks the nation's capital.
Yeah, well, that happens here and there.
In the conservative regime more than the liberal regime in your days.
Oh, well, remember, I'm going to write a sequel. I haven't done a number on the Tories yet at all.
This is all about liberal scandal.
Yeah.
And the appalling conduct of senior liberal cabinet ministers thinly disguised in your book.
What appalling conduct.
Sex raises its ugly head everywhere throughout this book.
Nonsense, nonsense. There's one minister who sleeps with his secretary. Now, that's hardly unusual in Parliament.
Doesn't just sleep with his secretary, they carry on in the office after lunch in
You
the
don't think
dining
that's
room.
ever happened in either in Victoria or in Ottawa?
I should certainly hope not.
Oh, come on, Webster.
And then, of course...
But you know, I think sex is here to stay. And there isn't really all that much in the book.
Are you sure? Matter of
Well-
fact, the sex life of Kathleen Marshall...
She is gentle, but they're, you know, older. They're my age and yours.
I see.
And
I'm
no.
not in the book, I hasten
How
to
do you
add.
know? How
I
do
know
you know?
damn fine. I read it very
Because that
closely
gorgeous
indeed.
man, Wickstrom, who's the one she marries, Andrew Wickstrom. I've had all kinds of people guess who that is, and nobody yet has guessed Webster.
No, it's not
But I'm
Webster.
surprised.
He's got money, he's very stuffy and square. Hey, that could be
That's
me.
right, it could be you.
Yeah, I never thought of
That's
that, Judy.
right.
Margaret, tell Margaret you're joking. She's watching.
I'm not joking, Margaret. I love him dearly.
She'll fix your duff, I'll tell you. Now, Francis Fox, of course, sticks out like a sore thumb in the book.
Oh, Francis Fox resignation does, but that's fair game, Jack. Look, you're a journalist. If I had used...
No, I'm not a journalist.
Well, you have been.
A journalist is
All
a
right, you're a
newspaper
reporter.
reporter. I have a job. I'm
All
a
right.
reporter.
If I'd used Wilbur Mills's stuff of cavorting around in the yacht basin in Washington as a gimmick in the novel, you wouldn't have said a thing. Or
No.
if I'd used that disastrous stuff of Jeremy Thorpe in London, people might have said, well, because the trial isn't over with. But because I use a Canadian historical fact, everybody said, ah!
No,
you're
no,
doing that
no.
for it."
I'm not saying, I'm only trying to help you sell your rather salacious little book.
Well, go ahead.
That's
Sell
what I'm
it.
doing up to
Tell
now.
people where I'm going to be signing today and tomorrow. That'll
Oh,
help.
now, don't be quite so gross, so grungy.
I got to be gross. I'm here to make money,
Don't
to
be
sell
so
a book.
grungy, Judy.
Look, the same reason you work, Webster, is for money, is why I wrote that.
How much did that Royal Commission cost?
Oh, it was one of the least expensive ones.
How
What
much
you
did it
heard about-
cost?
It cost about $2 million in 2.5 years.
$2 million
Oh, we do that all the time.
for sitting there listening to witnesses.
Well, that was part of it, and traveling around, and the research, which also included some very important research from British
Nothing but the
Columbia.
best first-class travel and chartered planes.
Oh, that's no government chartered planes.
Government chartered planes.
That's right.
Don't distract me. Here,
Okay, you're distracting me.
give me the denouement. Is that the right way
Yeah.
to say it? Vous parlez français?
Well, yeah.
Denouement.
Well, but you can't do it on this. It's an Anglo station.
Listen, did you see? Oh, I want to talk
Anyway,
about that later.
there are three
Denouement.
people who are ministers in the book. One is a prime minister, and
And
there's
that is
the-
obviously a combination Pierre and somebody else.
you know, Jean-Jacques Charles, his name is. He's married to a woman who's nothing like Margaret.
No.
But
She dies in the abortion, which she can't have because he's against abortion.
yeah,
Rather
I
sad.
think she's kind of nice.
Yeah, she is
I
kind
really
of
had
nice.
Joan
You
Baez
make
in
him
mind when
get-
I did her.
Did you? You make Pierre, what's the name of your prime minister in this book?
Jean-Jacques.
Jean-Jacques Pierre. You make him rather a nice fellow. I thought you
I
might
thought
have
so
taken.
too.
I thought you might have taken the odd chance to shaft at the man whom you called a bastard at one time.
Oh, I shafted him at that time.
That's all forgiven.
Well, every time I've seen Trudeau in the last several years, we've been very courteous to one another.
Now, the denouement
Well, it's that these three
finally
people
shows off
come
your
into
secret or your conscious desire to be the first woman prime minister of Canada. Is that not correct?
No,
Well, how does the book finish? With
Well,
you as the leader of the Liberal Party
not
of
with
Canada.
me, with Kathleen Marshall becomes. What are you doing giving away the end of the book, for heaven's sake? You know you're not supposed to do that.
Why not?
Well, you don't never do that with a novel.
I've already sold it as reasonably salacious. People will buy it for that.
Okay.
Had you ever written any non-fiction, apart from your political speeches, had you written any
No, no.
non-fiction before?
No, but I'm going to do it again. I've already signed a contract for the sequel.
I think it's a very good book, Judy. I really do.
Good.
Thoroughly
Say it again.
enjoyable. I think
Say it
it's a
again.
very good book.
Again.
There's sufficient,
When am I signing it in public, Jack?
Oh, now don't give me that garbage. You're so well known. Why don't you use your old hotline show to tell people? Where are you signing it in public?
I don't know. It's 3 places. I thought he gave you a list.
Didn't give me the list. You're dead.
Anyway.
What do you mean I've got the list? I haven't got the list. Nobody gave me a list.
Anyway, I'm signing it at the Bay.
Hold on, and we'll get that for
okay.
you in a minute, Judy. Is it still the Honourable Judy LaMarsh? You keep that forever?
Well, yeah, that's an official title, whether or not people think it belongs to me. or
PC?
not.
You still a PC?
PC, QC, LLD.
Do you think you'd look better if you took that raccoon's tail off the side of your...
Not if you saw what my hair looks like. I'm growing it out.
I think you should take that off,
Oh,
Judy.
I like the hat.
Is it separate?
No, it grows out of my ear.
Webster and Judy La. There we go. Impossible. One female attribute, and you may hit me if you wish, is an ability to nag. Judy will be signing books for people in this part of the province. Today at Eaton's Pacific Centre, 12:30 to 1. Tomorrow at the Bay downtown, 12:30 to 1, and 3 to 3:30 at Woodward's Department, Oakridge.
No, I don't have to nag anymore.
No, but you are a nag. Let's look at the political state of the nation.
Okay.
You made an astonishing, mind you still are a capital L Liberal.
Yes, and a small L.
You don't have to add that. You're still a member of the
Well,
party.
there aren't very many small L's, I'll tell you, left in the world.
What do you
Everything
mean not
seems to
very
have
many
turned
small
right.
L's?
No, everything seems to have gone all right.
Do you
every
blame
place.
people for going to the right after the excesses of your and other governments and the wastage of money and the sloppy schemes and the giveaways and the lack of any discipline in society?
Yeah, I expect there'll still be some Liberals left.
Very few.
I don't think the Liberals are responsible for the lack of discipline in society. I think that we all just got fat and sloppy on Me Too and said, let somebody else do it.
Yeah, except that your people have been in charge all these years, except for one short Tory intermission.
You can't blame me for anything in the last 10 years.
Except that you're a Liberal.
Yeah, okay.
Ipso facto, Liberals are sloppy and wasteful.
Oh, nonsense.
Okay, you made a political prediction to me, which I find hard to stomach. What
Yeah, I
was
think
it?
he's going to make it.
He?
I think that Pierre Trudeau is going to be elected as a minority, and you know he was in 72-4. And he wasn't so bad then. Because there's a very funny thing that's happened as I've come across the prairies in this thing. It is not a custom of Westerners to ask Easterners for advice. Matter of fact, they're usually fighting it off. But in this case, I thought when I got the prairies, I'd find people. They'd say, "Here's Joe. Here's a fellow who's from our own, you know, a Westerner." Fresh young voice, let's get behind him, really go, Joe, Joe, Joe. Instead of that, they have a puzzled look on their face and they're saying, you know, can he make it? Can he make it? And I think that that kind of uncertainty means when you come right down to putting the X down, that people are going to say, the devil we know is something we'll choose, the devil we don't know.
Yeah, this is obviously going to be the principal Liberal campaign propaganda line throughout the entire campaign.
Is it?
Yes, it's going to be, really, Pierre has his faults. Pierre's had his troubles. We have lost control of the money, but after all, look at the alternative, and really, better
Well,
the
if
devil
that's-
you know
I don't know,
than
but
the
if-
devil you don't.
but if that is going to be
Have
it-
you not been programmed
No.
by
Because
Keith
I'm
Davey
really
or
quite
somebody?
surprised as I go across the prairies that that's the reaction. And it comes from journalists, comes from reporters, comes from all the people I've been meeting on a book tour. And you know, I'm not on a political tour. I don't have
No,
anything active
agreed.
to do with the party. It really quite surprised me. Certainly never was true when Diefenbaker was there. You know, he was the man of the West, and he was the one they supported. But that isn't happening.
Now, Horner's the man of the West. Isn't that funny?
Well, I haven't been to Edmonton yet, but when I was in Calgary on Friday, nobody mentioned Horner.
Andrus was giving me the party line the other day, Robert Andrus.
Uh-huh.
I suppose he could be called the English lieutenant of the cabinet now. Now that
Oh, I'm
everybody
sure
else has gone.
you wouldn't call him that with Otto Lang around.
Well, I don't know. Lang doesn't have much stature in the West, does he?
Well, he thinks he has.
Well, I don't know.
If you had a leadership convention right now amongst the Liberals, he'd be running, for heaven's sake.
Who would get it if you had one?
Well, I don't know. I think maybe everybody'd stay at home.
Yeah, but Andrus, the line with Andrus is, of course, that Joe is really being quite cold-bloodedly political on his promise of tax cuts and stimulating deficits and whatnot. And you Liberals are now conceding that, apart from world conditions, you have made a mess of the finances of the country that were dashed nearly broke.
Well, maybe, don't say you Liberals.
Why not?
Maybe the Liberal government is. I don't know, Jock. Whether we've made a mess of it, I don't think so. I'm able to see, looking from southern Ontario, that things south of the border are pretty darn bad. I think that we people have been responsible for a lot of it. Have you been out of the country for a southern vacation yet?
No.
Are you going?
No.
Good for you. Are you going to England or Scotland?
No.
Good. Well, we should keep our money home. I'm sick and tired of people who are developing in the States and who are going off on holidays and saying, oh, somebody else will look after it. I would just as soon wait, try and reverse that tremendous deficit and get our buck back a little bit before we start selling our country abroad.
To be quite seriously, not just to nag you, the fact is that I suppose Trudeau's greatest political fault is that he has the ability to give leadership, but doesn't ever give it.
Well, he does from time to time, but it doesn't make people, very happy when he
You
says...
couldn't name an issue on it.
Oh, sure, when he says we have to start belonging to the Conservative Society, we've got to take less, whether we happen to be a manufacturer or an individual, when he's looking in at projection
Oh, and
into
then
the
in the
future.
meantime, he spent $500 million, Huntington tells me, potentially, on one small development across the river in Hull, Quebec.
Well, you don't think Huntington's going to tell you anything that's to the government's credit.
I know that 180 million of it's true anyway.
Okay,
in
so
one
180
particular
million
development.
is peanuts in this country.
Well, no, it's not
If
peanuts.
you're talking
That's
about
the trouble with the country.
Well, if you're talking about the building across the hall of the
Chateau de
office
Terrier.
buildings, sure, they're there. The ones that are empty in Ontario, as I understand, are ones which developers built and the government rented it on a short-term basis while they built the other stuff across the other side. And there's all kinds of empty space, but it's rent space on the Ottawa side. And a lot of people don't like to go to Hull, but that's silly. It's like you driving out here to work as compared to being in Gastown.
Have you noticed the suppression in the French and English language media in Quebec on Lévesque's incredible behavior at the
really,
departure of Raymond Barre,
he
the Prime
must have
Minister
been
of
drunk
France?
as a skunk, I
Must have been.
think, to act like that. And René is very careful not to look overweening, not to look like he's licking his lips and really enjoying something that's happened. But he sure blew it that time.
This was an occasion, dear listener, in case you missed it, having no newspapers here, of course, where on the departure of Raymond Barre back to France, they're on a balcony, and René makes the most incredible demands on Barre to say, "Vive la Québec libre." And Barre, of course, wouldn't go. He said, "Vive la Français de la Québec." I think that's as far as he would go, and he was highly embarrassed. But both Radio Canada and the French and English media played it down, except for, I think it was Johnson and the Globe and Mail and a couple of tabloids in Montreal.
Yeah, I think Maclean's has written something about it too. And that was followed by a dinner right at the end when Lévesque was insulted everybody in sight, apparently, and really made tried to draw France again
Do you think he's blown,
right in the middle of
do you think he's blown it, Lévesque?
Well, I don't think that'll
don't
make
know
him blow
much
it
about
if they don't know about it. But he's certainly far from sure at this point to call his referendum, or he would have called it.
What do you want to talk to people about?
Whatever they want to talk about.
What do you want to talk
Nice
to
to be
people about?
back.
Oh, don't give me that nice to be back.
It is nice to be
business.
back.
You're only a transient in this province.
At the moment,
Then, too. How long were you here?
a year.
Loved it.
Yes, I did.
You were always terribly impressed by the seagulls swooping on the water.
That's right.
And
The
the
only
whitecaps.
reason I didn't stay, Webster, was when you and I were neck and neck for one ratings thing. And I said, I'll stay, but you got to pay me what you paid Jack. Yeah, I beat you on one of them. You know damn well you didn't pay for lunch that day. Anyway, I said I won't work for less than a man. And they almost had a bird at the idea of paying me what Webster got paid.
You're not as good as I am at the radio
I
talk
didn't
business.
expect that I would stay number one by any chance, but I would be number two. And I said I'd go up and down in salary.
Anyway, you've written a better book than I have. Your questions to Judy LaMarsh, alias Kathleen Marshall, star of a very political
Wait till
lady.
your book comes out.
Oh. Okay, take it away and we'll go to the phones. My guest is the Honourable Judy LaMarsh, PC. Is that right?
QCPC LLD.
Are you QC too?
Yeah, sure I am.
Honorary.
Honorary QC. I've
Yeah.
been practicing law for 29 years off
It's
and
only
on,
family
Jack.
law.
Only family law. What's more important?
LLD.
Gee, if Margaret, if you ever get really fed up with him, I'll come and get a call to the BC bar and we'll really take him.
My
Be
son's a
nice to
lawyer.
me, Webster.
Go ahead, please.
Hello.
Yes, yes.
I just wanted to say hi to Judy LaMarsh, and
Hi.
I'm quite interested in maintaining her book to read that. It's good that I'm just wondering, is that all to do with government?
Well, it's all to do with people in government.
To do with all the people in government?
Do you want to name all? Do you want to give us the cast of characters for whom we should look in the book, apart from the little vignette about Simmer?
Well, you
which
can
is-
look for Kathleen Marshall, who
That's
might
you.
be somebody. You can
Right.
look for Hume Fraser, who might be John Turner, or he might be Francis Fox, or he might be Bob Winters. You can look for Jean-Jacques Charles, who might be the present Prime Minister, or might not be. There's a fellow they say looks like Horner. There's a fellow they say who looks like Otto Lang.
I gather from the book that the names that you have used are fictitious. Is that?
Oh, very much.
Oh yeah,
so.
This is what they call a roman à clef. And you remember those funny things we used to have in Sunday newspapers, when you had newspapers, with a drawing of a tree and faces in it, and you say, see how many faces you can get? It's the same sort of thing in the book.
The characters are not real. This is a work of fiction in which there has been no attempt to portray real people in real situations.
That's right.
Okay, now, one question I'd like to ask, okay?
Yep.
Now, it states that Canada is supposed to be a place of freedom of, I believe, speech.
Yes, yes.
And I'm just wondering why, writing such a book that
Why you have to use
openly
disguise situations.
so in certain people, why these things can't be used.
Hold on, she'll answer you. It's a good question,
Yeah.
as a matter of fact.
Well, you can use real names, but it's not a real book. It's about a conflict between three people who are ministers together, and one of them becomes prime minister, and over the abortion issue, he fires the woman minister. Then over something like the Francis Fox issue, he fires another one, and then you come full circle and all three run the convention.
No, but
Now,
that's
those
not the
circumstances
answer he
have never
wants.
occurred.
The answer he wants, if I may be so bold, as to presume on a QC, LLD, PC, but being better than you at the talk business, the answer he wants is this. Were she to use real names and portray real-life situations, she'd be sued down to her cotton socks. Because you cannot hold people up to ridicule and contempt unless you are prepared to prove it eventually in the courts in the public interest without malice and perhaps with truth as part of a defense.
You know,
Am I correct?
That's pretty good,
what really
for
gets
non-lawyer.
me here?
That's the answer, sir, though. I'm much obliged. Go ahead, please.
Yes, I'd like to direct my question or my comment to Judy LaMarsh. Am I on now?
Yes, sir.
Yes. Judy mentioned, or Miss LaMarsh mentioned in her comments about keeping Canadian money here in Canada.
Yes.
Now, I lived in Ontario for 25 of the 30 years that I've lived in Canada. But the same thing happens in Ontario, that every Sunday across at Niagara Falls, you'll see all Canadian license plates. If you go across here to Boyne, you'll see Canadian license plates. All that money is going on out of this country, week after week, and it must happen in the other close ports of call or, you know, on the border crossings. Why do we still, somebody doesn't take up the platform of the archaic liquor laws in this country?
Not much of a
What's
question.
that got to do with the liquor laws? I mean, he means they're going over
He's
there to
saying he's
drink?
got freedom. He wants freedom to go wherever he likes. You want currency controls if necessary.
No, I don't. What I want to do is the people to see themselves that it's their country and their government and their responsibility to help strengthen the dollar.
Here, here. By the way, just I don't want a long answer on this. Do you keep it short? One of the things that all the parties are agreed on is the so-called decriminalization of marijuana. As the former Minister of Health, where do you, Miss LaMarsh, stand on that?
Not very keen.
Well, I'm very pleased to hear it. I really am. I thought you'd give me the old Liberal Party line.
No, I thought I'd be right-wing just to stroke you.
Go ahead, please.
Thank you. Good morning.
Morning.
I'd like to speak to Miss LaMarsh, please.
That's why she's here. Go ahead.
Good. Now, Miss LaMarsh, I'm a former Ottawan, and you can hold that against me if you wish. It doesn't really matter. But I remember the time that Jean Piggott was running, I think. Didn't your secretary, wasn't he her right-hand, one of her right-hand men helping her?
Who?
Jean Piggott.
No.
Well,
No, he ran in that seat the time before against John Turner.
oh, that was it, yes. And I just
And he's now one of the chief aides of Joe Clark,
Yes. I just wondered
Who
if...
was that? What was his name?
Bill Neville.
Oh, Bill Neville. Yes, yes.
That's right, I'm sorry. Now, I'm wondering, would you not go back into politics?
No,
Are you seeking a nomination?
no,
If drafted to be the leader of the Liberal Party of Canada, would you accept it?
no,
Not even as a woman.
no.
So the book is just a dream.
No,
not
it's a
scenario.
novel. It's a novel.
I thought it was your personal scenario.
Oh, come on.
Salmon arm to Judy LaMarsh.
Hi. I'd like to address my call to Miss LaMarsh.
Mm-hmm.
It's nice to see somebody from the East. I'm from the East, too. And I was wondering if maybe you could go into public relations for the East. People out here don't know it's just as beautiful as out here in its own way.
The poor lonely
Well.
Easterner. As a matter of fact, if I may take the question, just to keep the show moving along sharply, I had,
Stop, Dad Webster.
I had been in Toronto for 20 years before I knew it was anything other than a collection of grimy snow. And I went out to visit a place at Balsam Lake, and I was truly astonished that they had green
You're
grass
a true
and
Easterner.
fresh.
You came from Glasgow, for heaven's sakes, even east of Toronto.
That's west of Scotland, you fool.
What's east of Toronto?
I know, but I thought Toronto was dirty snow, to be quite honest.
Well, it isn't.
It's not.
A
Thank
lot
you
of
very
other
much.
dirty things, but not the
Do
snow.
your best for the PR for the East. Victoria, call to you, Miss LaMarsh from Victoria.
Good morning.
Morning.
Yes, I've really enjoyed your program this morning, and I think it's because we have you both on TV together. You're a good match for one another, and is there a possibility of having a joint TV program?
No.
Webster gets paid too much. And besides, he's sitting there in the most beautiful ultra suede jacket. I'm just so jealous.
Well, this is it. You could be paid the same as Webster then.
Great idea.
Got it second hand from San Francisco Tailors.
San Francisco.
San Francisco Tailors.
Oh, here.
Used to be a
Second-hand.
pawn shop downtown. I don't know if it still is or not.
Listen,
Very nice
Jack, when you
place.
were on the radio, you just didn't dress like that.
I certainly did not. Neither did
But
you.
you
if
could
I might
afford
say
to.
so. A very expensive crocheted, what's that stuff?
Wool.
Wool dress.
Yeah, wool. Nobody remembers it anymore.
With a raccoon's tail growing out of her right ear. She was always noted for her dress sense. Hair graying under the hat.
Not as badly as some people I might know.
I see. I touch it up a little bit. Me and Jean Beliveau. Is it Jean Beliveau or
Yeah,
Rich?
he's the one who comes in and he's
That's
Grecian
right.
formula or
Grecian
something.
formula. That's Grecian formula.
Gee, and that's a plug you didn't get paid for, I'll bet you.
Got a free tube from
Rare
a listener
enough.
the other day. Go ahead, please.
Judy,
Yep.
your book, how much is that book going to sell for?
$12.95 is the publisher's price.
$12.95.
$12.95 an inch.
Yeah, it's terrible. I thought it was, and I looked at other novels, and they're all the same size. Sorry.
Sorry, but $12.95. $1.50 to you.
Judy,
$1.29.
$1.29.
hello.
Yes, one last question to you.
You know that the books that Webster advertises for these writers sell in the vicinity of $17, $18. And then the Reader's Digest turns around and sells 4 of them for $1. What is yours going to come out for in the Reader's Digest? How much money will it sell?
Silly question.
I don't think anything, and besides that, those are second and third print rights. They're quite different. You know, you have a contract with the publisher, and the publisher, the percentage is all set down, but he doesn't even know at the time you sign the contract what the bill will
That
cost.
was just a silly question. Didn't make any
No.
sense.
Well, I thought it was a lot of money, too, but I looked around. That's what others are selling for, too.
I'm going to do 5 minutes more with Judy after this break. Nostalgia for you. Go ahead, Judy.
Nostalgia, my foot. Mr. Webster, I have been listening to you pontificating for the last few months, and I tell you what, as Professor Henry Higgins says, you have met your match.
That's because I love him, you know.
No,
We just use one another as punching bags.
read about you in papers, but at the same time, it's nice to see where the essence comes from. And you are cute, and I like your raccoon tail.
You talking to me or Judy?
Huh?
Have you got a raccoon tail? I'm the only one here with a raccoon tail.
Oh, dear Mr. Webster, I hope you rest in peace, sir, because you have met your match.
If I cut him off now?
Your show.
Think he's finished?
Your show. I think
Well,
he's probably finished.
You know what? He just landed from Toronto 5 minutes
But
ago.
the thing is, it doesn't mean you're finished, Jack, so that's what's important.
I can just cut him off.
He can't do that to you, can he?
Yeah, he can switch me off.
Oh.
Steven, cut him off, switch him off. Go ahead, please.
Hello?
Yeah,
Yeah. How are you today?
yeah,
You're pretty good?
yeah,
You catch the eclipse?
yeah.
You just, about that book.
Don't you love talk shows?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, about the book. Is that going to come out in paper?
Paperback in due course. Meanwhile, it'll cost you $12.95.
Next January.
Read The Secret Sex Scandals of Ottawa as witnessed and poisoned by Judy LaMarsh, alias Kathleen Marshall. Is that right?
Nope.
We're only trying to sell your book.
Yeah, I know, I appreciate that, but then people will be mad if they pick it up and that doesn't
It's
happen.
a good, well-written little book. Who wrote it
good.
for you?
I did. Oh, come on.
Go ahead, please.
Hello, Judy.
Yeah.
I wanted nothing to do with your book, but were you in the CWAC?
Yes, I was.
Where were you stationed?
In Halifax and Vancouver and Washington.
I was in the CWAC.
What was the CWAC?
Canadian Women's Army Corps.
Okay,
I didn't know you were a sergeant major.
I was a sergeant. And we saved this country for people like you.
Did you know this woman?
No.
Did they call them quacks?
Well, they did if they were not really worried about the reaction.
Oh, I see. Anything else you want to tell us about the Boer War?
No.
Thank you. Go ahead, please.
Judy,
Yep.
tell us your diet.
Oh, I wouldn't recommend it. It's malnutrition. I starved to death for 2 months because I didn't have time to stop and eat while I was writing. I had a very heavy deadline.
Are you going to continue on with your diet?
I lost 60 pounds in 4 months. I'm going to find out what my doctor says first.
How heavy were you when you went on the diet?
About 2 1/4. How heavy are you?
225, less 60. So you're now down to 165.
Well, it's a little lower than that now.
160.
What about you, Jack? Just stop putting that out over the air.
How tall are you?
I don't mind you saying how old I am.
How tall are you?
5'8" and a half.
5'8" and a half. How old are you, by the way?
54.
Don't look a day more than 53. 160 pounds, 5'8" and a half. You're still an ample woman.
Yes.
You could lose another 20 and be stylish.
Maybe so. You can't be too thin
No,
or too rich, but I think it's
big
enough.
bones.
Well, I just think
that was
it's
always
dumb.
your excuse when you were fat, that you had big bones. Now
No,
you know
I
it
just think
wasn't
it's
true.
dumb to do it that fast.
So do
it's
I.
Dangerous.
I hope you're on a good, balanced, high-protein diet.
No.
Drink your milk in the morning?
I do when I can.
I see.
Judy?
Yep.
Do lose another 20 and keep it. You look great.
Don't lose another 20. You'll be too skinny if you lose another 20.
I'm here to talk about the book, not my weight.
We've already talked about your book amply.
Well, there's more to talk about.
No, there isn't. A Very Political Lady, a novel by Judy LaMarsh.
Judy?
Yes.
I'm going out to get your book today, but you still have to keep that weight down. You look wonderful.
Thank you.
Bye.
Your face isn't that much thinner.
Nope.
You didn't have to get anything done to your neck or anything.
No, I might yet.
I'm just looking for a
I haven't had any kind of a facelift.
No?
No. But you know, there
Let me see behind your ears, see if there are any wee scars. No scars behind the ears. Go ahead,
None
please.
underneath my tail?
No. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, it's nice to see Judy back here on the coast. I just wanted to ask her a couple of questions. I was wondering when she thinks the next federal election is going to be called.
Oh, yeah, good question.
And who she thinks is going to win it, and perhaps she can even answer as an author who she hopes is going to win it, and why it's going to be won.
Oh, well, I guess the election will be this summer. I happened to run into Keith Davey and Jim Coots recently, and I asked Coots whether the Prime Minister's office had researched it. And he said yes, and they don't have to call it. They can stretch it by various means till the end of 80. But I think there'd be a revolution in the country if they did. So sometime this summer we'll have an election, I suppose, or the fall. My guess is if it comes this summer that Trudeau will be returned with a minority government. And the reason being, of course, that well, the government's done its damnedest to defeat itself, that the public, I don't think, is going to accept the opposition as a viable alternative.
Okay, having given that, I'll give you, seeing I've been nasty to you, I've been a little bit personal. You'll be showing off your new shape in Eaton's Book Department, Pacific Centre, 12:30 today, the Bay downtown, 12:30 tomorrow, and Woodward's Oak Ridge, 3 o'clock tomorrow afternoon. Keep your eyes fastened on the floor or she may slip through sideways and you won't even notice her. My thanks to Judy LaMarsh, a very political lady.
Thank you, John.
Well, Judy LaMarsh is on her way. And in her place is Muriel James, which says here, Muriel James, and I'm sorry I haven't read your book. You're a marriage counselor, a therapist, and a minister. And you've written a book called Marriages for Loving. And it says in the back of one of your earlier books, being a great guy for research as I am, that you're an international consultant in transactional analysis and communications. What the devil is transactional analysis? Are you a psychiatrist?
No, I'm not a psychiatrist. A psychiatrist is somebody that has a MD degree as well as training in psychological ideas. I'm a marriage and family counselor. It has some of the same background and some is different.
Born to Win, your earlier book sold 1 million copies.
No, 2.
2 million copies.
And is now in about 10 languages.
What's your message for people? I thought you were a Gestalt therapist or something.
Well, that too. My message for people is that even though they feel like losers, and perhaps act like losers at times, is they can learn how to become winners.
In marriage?
In any way.
Regardless?
In life. Yes.
Isn't marriage going down the tube now? Or has
For
that
some
stopped?
people. However, there seems to be a resurgence of interest. And in my book, Marriage is for Loving, which is just coming out this week, what I'm doing is raising the issue, what is marriage for? And what are the various ways to think about it? What are the different views people hold on marriage? If they want their marriage to be more loving, rather than merely a convenience or something like that, then what would they need to do to get a better show on the road than they may have had before?
Do some marriage counseling. No, I shouldn't put it quite so brutally as that, but surely in the last decade, or the last 2 decades, there's been very much a downgrading of marriage,
yes.
Parental influence, bringing up children, having a family, discipline, and perhaps that old-fashioned stultified marriage of the formal kind of clan arrangement has gone forever and for good too. Is that right?
Yes, I think many people are no longer choosing to have a traditional type marriage where a woman is merely a convenience, either as a housekeeper or as a bed partner, and they're wanting something more in their life. So instead of a marriage, well, a marriage can be for the convenience of...
Is marriage necessary at all, in your view?
No, it is not necessary. It is simply what many people will choose.
But with today's immaturity among so many youngsters, the fact that marriage is not necessary, does that not give it an odds-on chance of breaking up regardless if there are no firm bonds?
Well, marriage will break up whether or not people are married, depending upon what their essential values are, and if they consider their marriage is important enough for them to, to really work on it.
Yeah, don't you kind of regret the disappearance of the old formalized marriage with the mother staying at home looking after the children?
No, I don't.
Don't you think that's part of the trouble today?
No, I don't.
Are you married?
Yes.
How many children?
7.
How many times married?
3.
3 times married? Mm-hmm. 3 times married?
Right. Once widowed, once divorced, and then married
once
again.
widowed, that of course is one thing.
Okay.
And why did your second marriage break up? Give us your experiences.
Without talking about my husband, I would like to say that after 18 years of marriage to one man, we outgrew each other, and perhaps I didn't know enough how to change myself or how to change him. I don't put the blame on him.
If you had it to do over again, if you could read your own book, Marriage is for Loving, would that marriage have lasted?
It probably would have.
So you were to blame?
No, we were to blame. I don't think one person is usually to blame. I think each person has a responsibility in it. However, my present marriage, which is 15 years.
Not bad.
Not bad, and it's going to last till one or the other of us die.
How old are you, Muriel?
I'm 62.
Oh, just a young one.
No, it's not so young.
You're older
that's the way
than
I
me,
am.
mind you.
I don't mind.
You don't mind at all.
No, I don't mind.
I read something about you in Gestalt therapy, and I'm a bit of a psychologist myself. Matter of fact, I conduct psychoanalysis for large numbers of people.
Do you? I'm sure you do. I'm sure you do.
As you may have noticed. Define Gestalt therapy for me.
Okay. Gestalt therapy, like transactional analysis, is both a theory and method of how people can get in control of their lives, how they can change what they need or want to change, how they can free themselves from some of the past.
Yeah, but how? How?
Well, in Gestalt.
Gestalt, yes. I love that. German word, is it?
Okay, it's a German word.
What does it mean?
It means, well, let's see, it doesn't translate exactly. So let's say it means sort of like bringing the broken pieces together. And everybody has broken pieces in their lives. And to re-experience some of the past traumas and take responsibility for where a person is enables them to get on with things. For example, one of the major techniques in Gestalt therapy is called the double chairs. And in using double chairs, an individual sits in one chair, such as I'm sitting in now, and opposite is another chair, which is called a projection chair. And the therapist, in working with this person or the person working with themselves, suggests that they project onto the chair a current problem, a person that they're involved with, somebody from the past.
You mean talk to the chair?
They talk to the chair. They see whatever it is that they want to see in the chair. If they have, say, a tic, They might put the tick in the chair. If they have a stomach ache, they might put the stomach ache in the chair. And they might say things like, hey, stomach, you know, why are you aching? And, you know, when a person is in kind of a regressed state, the person is able to get feedback.
Crazy as a loon.
It may be crazy and it works.
Hey, camera, stop smoking, camera. Will you, camera? Hey, camera, take this cigarette. Because I can't stop smoking.
Yeah.
I can only stop smoking on camera. See? Would that help me?
It might.
Hey,
You might need somebody to direct you.
I don't want direction from
I know,
anybody.
that's why Gestalt therapy doesn't work with some people.
Wouldn't work with me.
No.
You know? I get up every morning and I face the brutality of life.
Then I want to tell you about another book I wrote. It's called The New Self. And it's
The New Self?
The New Self. And
I think
it's
you're all
how to
crazy.
do
I really think you're all
self-therapy
crazy.
for people who don't want help.
Whatever became of common sense? Whatever became of innate ability to look after yourself?
There's a great deal of that.
You sometimes wonder, don't you?
Yes, I do. I don't think
you
that
think the
common
human race
sense
is
is so
going down the
common.
tube?
No, I don't.
That's everybody but you and me.
No, I don't think it's going down the tube.
Take
That's
a break,
where I'm
please.
at.
Would you please take a break while I talk to the camera and the chair? And I'll talk to Freddie just the same. The translation from the German of the word Gestalt is configuration.
Right.
I suppose it means a pattern.
It's a pattern, so it's pulling the pieces together.
I thought that was the kind of psychiatry where it was kind of like Coué. Remember Coué? Every day in every way I'm feeling better than better.
No, I don't remember him. How old are you?
I'm younger than you are.
Okay, you read something I haven't read.
Coué, C-O-U-E-U or
Of
something.
course, this is the dream everyone has, that every day in every way they would be getting better and better. And very often they don't take responsibility so that they do.
Surely the best psychological attitude for anyone to take is the past is the past. Today is the first day of the rest of my life.
I don't think so. It may be the first day of the rest of my life. However, I'm still locked into my past history. And what we are today is often related to what we were yesterday and the year before or 20 years before. Or even to what our culture says.
Some of that might be good. Maybe our culture is good.
You
Not
know, there's
all
a lot of
cultures are
okay
bad.
things about culture.
Anyway,
of course,
marriage
it hasn't been good about marriage.
The title of your book is somewhat banal. Marriage is for loving, isn't it? Isn't that the basic concept of
It
marriage?
depends upon if you think loving is a banal word.
No, I said the title is banal.
Ah, okay. That's an opinion.
All right. Romance doesn't come into... Oh, this is romance. It's a romantic book.
No, it is not. One of the views of marriage is that marriage can be for romance. However, the book is designed around 5 commonly held views of marriage.
What are they?
First, that marriage is a convenience. Sexual, political, social, economic, you know, so on.
Right.
Secondly, that marriage is for a spiritual union. That something happens to people when they get married in which God enters in and transforms them in some way. This is
Right.
particularly true for people who've grown up in religious organizations.
On a good
Third-
basis, too.
It's one basis. Third is that marriage is for romance. And this is the Romeo and Juliet idea, you know, I'll kill myself if you leave me, or Barbara Streisand's, you know, words, I was half, now I'm whole. Ortega Gasset says romance is a state of temporary imbecility. It's certainly got a manic depressive syndrome where people are high one minute and low the next. The fourth point of view is that marriage is for companionship and friendship, and this is increasing in our culture, I think, at least in our Western culture. And last, that marriage is for loving. And loving is a word that's kicked around, and there's many definitions to it. The definition I'm using is it's one that has a relationship of zest, it has passion, it has desire, it has unconditional goodwill for the other person. Now, in a loving marriage, all these other views may also be active. However, the focus is somewhat different.
Should this kind of... Do you talk about the ideal marriage with all parts of those components in it?
No, I talk about the plus and minuses of each one of those, but I wouldn't dream of setting myself up to say, well, this is, quote, the ideal marriage. I don't think that there is such a thing. What's ideal for one person wouldn't be ideal for the next.
Should marriages be sexually open nowadays? Is that bad or good? That's bad.
I don't want to use those words. What I will say is that most people that I have worked with, when they live in open marriages, their marriages do not last.
Well, say it's bad. Why not say it's bad?
Well, it's
If
the way they
open
decide.
marriages don't last...
It's bad for marriage.
Well, that's the point.
Yeah, okay. It's bad for marriage.
And you're in favor of marriage.
Yes, I am.
Ipso facto, it's bad.
Okay.
Okay. I can't push you any further than that, can I?
No. You got me.
No, I haven't got you. So.
It's all right if you do.
What about ordinary people? I mean, ordinary people don't think about open marriages. They think about companionship and a partner, generally speaking, and,
no, they may
and
use
children.
Yeah, or they may use the term affairs,
Woman's
so
place,
they will think about it.
Yeah, woman's place is still primarily, the maternal function is very important to all women. To have the baby,
No,
isn't it?
Not to all women. Many women are choosing not to have children.
Wrongly choosing not to have
No,
children.
I wouldn't say that. They're choosing on
Denying
the basis
themselves
of
their God-given right to carry on their particular branch of the species.
Well,
I'm looking over to see if I get any reaction over here. I'm not, no.
I happen to have children and
7
12
children.
grandchildren, and yet I respect, because I've been involved in some of the women's liberation movement, I respect women's choices when they decide not to have children.
Yeah, the women's lib doesn't seem to be making the splash it used to, I suppose because it's becoming established now. And
Yeah,
women
it
are being
depends upon what you mean
recognized.
by lib. Yeah, I believe in
What do
women.
you mean by lib?
What I mean by lib is that women being liberated to think for themselves and to make some of their own choices around their own bodies.
Yeah, the first women who were liberated really were those in Eastern European countries where they were liberated by necessity because their skills were needed. Isn't that right?
I don't think they were liberated.
Well, they became liberated by happenstance.
No.
They became doctors in the Soviet Union because all the men were in the wars.
Oh, no, but if you deal further with ancient history, then there were no liberated women, except perhaps in the ancient Egyptian culture, where as early as 4000 BC, to inherit land, it had to go through the women's side of the family. To get the throne, someone had to marry the woman who had it.
Matriarchies.
Yeah, it was a matriarch.
Yeah.
That was the only place where women had liberation. Sparta, they had open marriage.
Oh, I'm
there.
all in favor of women playing a proper part in society, providing that we don't lose the
Providing
institution.
you decide what the
Providing
proper
we
part
don't
will
lose
be.
the institution of family altogether.
I don't see why we would.
It looks pretty bad at the moment, I'll tell you.
Well,
Very
it's
grateful.
not all women's responsibility.
No.
Men have something to do with it. There's an increasing number of men that I enjoy meeting with that say, I want to be more active in the marriage. I want to have a share
Yeah, I
in
want to do
determining.
the dishes. I
No,
want to
they're
do
not
the
saying-
washing. I
Well,
want to do
more
the
men are
sewing.
doing that.
I know.
Yeah.
Odd people they are.
And no, I did a workshop yesterday for the Transactional Analysis Institute up here, and many of the participants were men.
Are you Cold Mountain?
Am I what?
Are you connected with Cold Mountain?
No, I don't even know what Cold
Good.
Mountain is.
Just forget it. then. I
Okay.
thought they were transactional analysts up here too.
No, I'm connected with someone called Kathleen Colbeck and the James Transactional Analysis
Don't know
Institution.
them.
And for Burnaby Schools, I was doing a workshop yesterday. And
For the teachers or the children?
no, for in their adult education program.
Oh, yeah. That's
And many
good.
of those people who came were men. And these were men who were saying, what can I as a man do to enhance our marriage? What do I need to do, as well as what does my wife need to do, so that we have a marriage that is loving and supportive and not just a big drag?
Are these competent people who come to you and ask these questions?
I think so. They were all Canadians.
That's no guarantee.
Well, they seemed to me to be very intelligent. They came from all walks of life, and they were deeply concerned.
As the perfect husband, let me tell you, I don't need you, but other people may.
Okay.
Marriage is for loving. My thanks to Muriel James from San Francisco. Thank you very much, Muriel.
Thank you.
25 seconds. What kind of week does it look, Linda?
Oh, I think we'll have a good week. We have Grace McCarthy coming on about the new rates for gain. We have Pierre Camus, the chairman of the CRTC. And tomorrow we might do a program on euthanasia.
Well,
Haven't
that's
quite
with
decided.
that very impressive Englishman. What was his name?
Derek Humphrey.
Derek Humphrey. Jean's Way.
Jean's Way is the book.
He was a chap who administered poison to his wife when she was in the terminal stages of cancer. He might not want to even look at the program, although it's very well done, I think. We've already got it on videotape.
That's right.
And it might create a fair bit of discussion. Sometimes you can do people live, sometimes you can't do them live. Pierre Camus, CRTC. Romeo LeBlanc isn't coming this week, is he?
I think Thursday, yes. Thursday.
Thursday.
We'll see him Thursday, yes.
because that'll be good because we've got to get up to date on all the fisherman stuff before we tackle Romeo.
Right.
I mean, I'm a member of the Pacific Salmon Society, and I want to know about this business of throwing back 18-inch salmon because they die anyway. It's the funniest thing. Once you hook a fish, they tell me. How many have I caught?
Not many.
Not very bleeding many, I'll tell you that. And old Persky's on the board.
Stan Persky, remember Stan?
Son of Socrates.
That's right.
Do you think we can stand Stan?
Of course we can.
Yeah, he's quite bright.
It'll be a good confrontation.
Yeah, Brian did a good job in Kelowna this morning. Brian flew up on Friday night, didn't he?
I think he's been busy all weekend.
Covered for the BC TV News Hour, and that was very good indeed. Now, what else have we got? So that's tomorrow morning, particularly, we'll probably use Jean's Way, and I'm going to go out to UBC to do a piece, am I not?
On their open house, you're going to do a walkabout.
With Dr. Kenny.
That's right.
That's tough. And we've got a little shot to show you how the eclipse looked at Kelowna this morning. And I think it'll be coming up any minute now, just because Brian and the crew were there. They took a shot of the eclipse anyway, which I think is a good thing, always to be on your toes. Where is it? There it is. Back to me.